So we know Le Mans 2005 will be coming very, very soon. But you might be wondering, Arvid, what is coming with the Le Mans 1988 and 1971 historic layouts? So that's exactly what I'm going to try and answer today. But first, before we get on the track and I show you how I drive and a lot of the mods, which I will be using to show off what might come, I have my first guest on the channel, Mr. Ghost. So I will just cut here, and now you will hear my conversation with him, and after that, I'll be driving. So now we are here with Ghost, the friend of the channel. So Ghost, do you want to describe yourself, please, quickly, or introduce yourself?
Hi, my new username is Ghost, and I've been in the Amos 2 modding community for a while, and I am a modder for this game. So yeah, I'm here to discuss some stuff with Racing Legend.
Yeah, he's here to discuss some things. Maybe not strictly modding today, but more about other parts of his expertise, which is actually what we're going to start with. So obviously, we know that Le Mans 1971 will be coming to AMS2 from Renato's Q&A, which I made the video on. And in that, yeah, he described that. And he also said that there will be a few cars coming. And obviously, since we're getting Le Mans 1971, which is the year Dr. Helmut Marko, who now works for Red Bull F1, won Le Mans in a Porsche 917. And also the movie called Le Mans was released in 1971, where Steve McQueen drove a 917, if I recall correctly. So, Ghost, can you explain a bit in, like, for the people who haven't heard of the 917, can you describe it, what type of race car it is?
So the 917 is the ultimate car in the 1960s, early 1970s Porsche Motorsport program, and in the endurance part. As the man by the name of Ferdinand Piëch had the brilliant idea to start making race cars in endurance with the Porsche brand to try and win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It started with the Porsche 904, 906, 908, and the 908 almost won. Their final project was the 917, where they built a flat 12, an atmospheric flat 12 engine on a tubular chassis. And it was the first models in 1969 were pretty unstable in terms of aerodynamics, so they had to make improvements. They had two different versions, the short tail and the long tail version. And it drove in the sports car championship with it, which is the equivalent of today's WEC, World Endurance Championship, in the goal of winning Le Mans. It was a very, very successful car, especially in 1970. It ran from 1969 to 1971. And a couple of its variations and successors ran in Can-Am until 73, if I recall correctly. So the car, yeah, as I said, in 1969, the drivers were pretty scared of it because it was very unstable in terms of aerodynamics, especially in the straight line. The end goal of the car was to reach the 400 kph in the straight line at Le Mans, which wasn't achieved, but the long tail reached 380. So it's a very, very fast car with decent aero for 70s. With a screaming 12-cylinder engine. It's a very interesting car.
Yeah, it sounds also very interesting. And for the people who are out there and don't fully know maybe what a flat engine is that instead of it being like a V-shaped, so like the cylinders pointing upwards, the engine was lying down, so the center of gravity would be lower and the handling would be better. And obviously it having 12 cylinders would also make it sound a bit cooler. And then another few things which Ghost will have to double check me on is, as if I recall correctly, they pressurized the chassis or the roll cage or what it was, the tubular chassis, and they put oil in it, if I was correct, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so they used a to test if the rigidity of the chassis and to see if there was any cracks anywhere. The tubular chassis here was an advantage because they could pressurize the whole entire system, and they checked the pressure and left it for a couple hours. And if the pressure had gone down, it means that they had cracks in certain areas. So they would check the chassis and patch these cracks. This would help a lot in rigidity. But it was a very, very, I think it was a special alloy chassis. There's a famous picture of a Porsche engineer holding the whole entire chassis above his head with his hands. So, yeah, it was a very lightweight car, very fast.
Yeah, and the hand gestures were just to show that the picture had come up on the screen.
Mm,
Because
understood.
Ghost can see me, just to clarify to you, so it's not just you seeing. And also, if I also recall correctly, the chassis was also very dangerous because the car exterior was made, or the certain safety parts were made out of glass fiber, which isn't something you want.
Yeah, yeah, the whole entire bodywork was made of glass fiber.
Yeah. So basically, if you live in like European countries, you might know, like Ghost here, might have heard of moped, or in Sweden they're called moped cars, which are cars which go 45 kilometers per hour maximum. And what they are special in is that they have a maximum weight limit, which means that the cars are made out of glass fiber and they are death machines. And that's basically what the 917 was, but with a lot more horsepower, let's just say, and higher
Yeah.
speed.
Mm.
And of course, it being a car from the 70s and late 60s, it had a manual gearbox. Do you know exactly how many gears?
Yeah, so there were two different versions of the gearbox. In 1969, it was only a 4-speed manual H pattern. But in 1970, they introduced a 4-speed shifter, but it was not. It was less reliable. So, for example, the 917 that won Le Mans in 1970 and 1971. Yes, we did. We didn't say this actually, but the 917 won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1970 and 71. It's second and third participation. But yeah, the version that won in 1970 used a 4-speed gearbox, and something that I find interesting is that the team even told them to not use the first gear. So they only had like practically a 3-speed gearbox in 1970, which I find interesting.
Yeah, and that nicely goes into the most important part, I would say, for the people watching, and that is how the handling characteristics would be for this specific type of car in AMS2. And obviously there's a mod out there which I'll be driving and showing off in this video. But quickly, do you have maybe any slight thoughts about if it will be like super hard, super easy? Maybe it will drift around a lot, like everybody says that all cars in AMS2 do, or will it be like super grippy and understeer a lot like LMU?
Yeah, so the 917 isn't a very drifty car, but it's not the most stable. It doesn't have the most grip of these cars if you compare it to more modern endurance things like Group C, for example. It's pretty hard to tame, especially considering it's an atmospheric engine and it delivers all its power immediately. Though it doesn't have a turbo lag, which is kind of an advantage. So the learning curve is pretty tough for this car, but as soon as you get used to it, especially with the short tail version, the long tail version is even harder to control because it's a very very long machine. Which is interesting, which brings you very high speed but less stability in the corners, which is an advantage at Le Mans, but only at Le Mans.
That's actually quite interesting. And I also believe this is something which could actually maybe make it actually slide more. And is, I believe, the tire technology they use. This is going a bit technical. If I recall correctly, I think it's called one of the types, which is called radial, is either the one we use now or was used before. But basically, the tires they used back then, they were designed so they needed a lot of slip angle to actually reach optimal grip. Like I know according to driver 61, he in his latest video said that F1 tires, modern ones, get like optimal grip with 3 or 4 degrees slip angle. And then if you watch old videos of like Ronnie Pettersson in like mid 1970s, then you get to see how much they're able to slide the rear out without actually losing it. So that could actually be something interesting for you to tame. And Ghost also mentioned Group C, which also gets us into what other content might come with 1971. Obviously, Group C might not come, because that got a bit later. But I remember there's a class called Group 5, isn't that right?
Yeah, so there's Group 5, which has the mythical Porsche 935 and it's all its variations, as well as the Ferrari 512 BB. But there's also, after that, there was the Group 6 category with the Alpine A4. I don't remember the name, but the Group 6 car and the Porsche 936, which were open top roof with huge Beckett's on top of the roof to scoop in the air.
Mm.
Yeah, and all of what I mentioned is already available as mods, by the way.
Yeah, I'll be revealing some.
Yeah, as well as, in theory, the 1971 version of Le Mans as a track mod. However, that version is not publicly available for complicated political issues inside of the modding community. I don't want to get into this right now.
Yeah, this isn't a politicals. This isn't like a news channel in that way, politics. We are not Fox News. But basically, I've wanted to make a video on that, so I'll just tell it to the people here, but obviously for the reasons Ghost has named. But also I would just remembered something which might need a bit of clarification. When you mean atmospheric engine, you mean naturally aspirated, don't you?
Yeah, sorry, that's a European bias.
yeah, the non-English languages. And otherwise, another thing which I just remembered, which I was going to reveal about, is that there is a certain piece of content in the files called the Ford Capri Group 5. And there's also another Ford in there, which I don't know, Ghost knows quite a bit about. But yeah, so it seems like Ford might be coming, and if Ford come, then they can release a different layout of the 1971 track, and they can make a special pack which includes cars from Ghost
1976, I guess. 1976 is an interesting layout for these cars.
I was more talking about the decade beforehand, Le Mans 1966, because you had basically the only difference between the 71 layout and the layout used in 66, if you discount the pits or the pit wall being added, was, I believe it's called the Ford, or in modern time it's the Ford chicane.
Even back then it was called the Ford chicane, because the Ford GT Mark IV, which is also a piece of content that could come in those eras, had broken the world record lap time, and the Ford Motor Company asked Le Mans to put a chicane there so that the record would never be beaten. And ironically, 2 years later, the record was obliterated, which I find pretty funny.
Yeah, so that's why Ghost is here, because he has quite a bit of knowledge on those things. But yeah, so that would be very interesting if we could simulate Ford versus Ferrari, if also Ferrari wants to license themselves in AMS2, but we have to see about that. And now I feel like we have talked enough about 1971, so Ghost, is there anything else which you want to talk about which might come in 1988? Because 2005 will be coming very, very soon, as far as I know. So I feel like I will do some quick talking about that. But 1988, it might not get a specific car pack, but it might get a few different cars from around that era. And maybe Ghost has a few he wants to talk about.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see if they could snatch a license for the Mazda rotary engine cars from that era, as well as the Peugeot 905 cars from that era, and the Jaguar that has the rear wheels covered. I love those three cars, and I find them very interesting. They would make an interesting Group 5 Gen 2 category, in my opinion.
Yeah, that would be very interesting because if you don't know this, viewers, Group C was a very long-standing racing series, and actually in 1988 they didn't have like in back in the day they used to have like these different classes with different types of cars, and in modern day too you have LMDH/LMH, and you have LMP2 as the prototypes, but then you have GT3 cars. Back then, it was only Group C cars around Le Mans. So imagine 50 prototypes going boom around on the Mulsanne Straight, reaching like 400, 500 km. Oh, 400. I don't think they reached 500.
No, they didn't reach 500, but that's not entirely true what you're saying. They did not have GT3 cars, but they did have GT classes in all the years from the start.
Well, according to Wikipedia in 1988, they only had Group C 1, 2, and 3 as the classes raced.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Group 2 and 3 incorporated did what we would call GT cars.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong. That's on me. But if we just talk a bit about the cars Ghost talked about, you obviously have the Mazda, which actually raced in 1988, but it wasn't the B version which won Le Mans. It was just the 787. And then the Peugeot, the Peugeot 905, you said, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 905. That one has a very interesting history because it used to be just sort of a normal a Group C car. But then at the end of its stint, at the end of Group C, which I don't think we can get, but it would be fun if we got, and that's when it became I believe, the first ever race car or race prototype with the sequential gearbox. And if you're a person who maybe don't like manual cars that much, then that would be an interesting choice for you. And I feel like this is sort of the end of this little segment with Ghost. So Ghost, if you have anything else you want to really talk about, we can talk about it now, or if otherwise you can just say some concluding stuff, and then I'll be showing my driving.
Yeah, so in conclusion, I'm pretty sure they're going to either have 1970. Well, we already know that we're going to get 1971 Le Mans and related cars, but we're either going to get stuff from the 1960s or for afterwards, like more 75, 76 era cars to accompany, in my opinion, the 1971 era. And for 1988, they're probably going to do the same thing, cars from before and cars from after to complete the pack. A couple ones at least.
Okay, so that's actually quite interesting too. But now we say goodbye to Ghost and then hello to my terrible driving. Okay, so now I'm in the 917K, which I obviously talked about how iconic this car would be to have in AMS2. And yeah, it seems like the gears are really optimized for Le Mans, where they seem to be very long. The car, I'm definitely not pushing it hard enough. Oh, this seems to be a very it seems to be a quick car, but it doesn't really act so quick. What I mean by that, it feels quite sluggish, sort of. It sounds good. I mean, when Reiza release their version of this car, it would be very awesome. But yet the brakes are not good at all, it seems. But I mean, this is a car from the 70s, so I mean, what can I expect? I can't really expect like LMP1 type of brakes. But still... Oh god, I need to really learn to brake. Just adjusted my pedal too to become a bit better. But yet this car feels old, as you could say. But the question is, do I have any more cars to show you from this era which could fit and maybe have a bit better brakes than this car? Well, let's see. Here we have Moby Dick, which, if you don't know, is the Porsche which was made specifically for the Group 5 class. And if I recall correctly, they could do some minor adjustments, or they could do some weird adjustments to the road cars. And this led to Moby Dick happening because they like moved the lights. And also, if I recall correctly, this is the car which has two back rear windshields. What I mean by that is it has two on top of each other. If I remember to try and find the picture, then you should see one. Yeah, this car definitely feels like an older car. The suspension feels not that hard. The brakes are, well, cold. And they don't feel that good. And you can see I'm turning the wheel. And it's not turning that much. It definitely feels like an older car. But yeah, this car feels quite fun to drive, actually. Yeah, I've just noticed I'm showing my idle game addiction all the time. Don't worry about that. The brakes on this car feel a lot better than the Porsche 917. Could be that this car is going a lot slower. So you can really see the bumps in this car, which is fun. Yeah, this car is fun. So in the 1971 pack, you will have a few prototypes, I assume, like the Porsche 917. Hopefully they also had a few ones from before that in a different pack, with like the Ford GT40, the old Le Mans 1966 Ken Miles car. I hope they had that. But then with the other cars, okay, it seems like it seems like I nearly blew up the engine. But I would say this car feels good, and I hope the prototypes feel better than the mod, because the mod felt a bit weird. And this mod also feels a bit weird, but it still feels kind of good. This car again feels a bit like it has front wheel drive, which I feel like is a bit of a Porsche thing maybe. Where when you accelerate, I don't know. But it seems to feel like a bit like a Porsche thing. Oof. Horrible understeer. But now we have completed this lap, so now it's time to maybe blow up the engine and head off to Le Mans 1988. Now we come to an interesting point where actually IMSA and, well, I don't remember what it was called back then, but like the sports car championship, I believe, WSCC. And where they differed was in Le Mans, it only had Group C cars from different classes, or that's according to Wikipedia, whilst in IMSA you had a class called GTO. And you may ask, oh, what cars raced in there? Well, you have a Nissan Skyline, a Porsche in the mod, and you have the Ferrari F40 LN, which seems to be quite unstable, if you ask me. I do not know why it's so unstable, but the rear seems to be very unstable. But these cars seem to be quite fun because they're like older sports cars. So they will be a bit trickier since they're sports cars, so they won't have as much downforce. And the brakes seem very good on this car. The rear a bit light. And a crash. Well, as you saw there, the rear is quite light. So now let's head off to a car I hope isn't very light, or the rear at least. And that's a good thing. Okay, so now we're in my favorite Group C car because of how unique it was. And that's the 787B. And as I stated previously, it's more likely we will get the 787 and not the 787B due to the 787 racing in 1988. But this car is so fun. It has something which no race car actually has anymore, or at least the Group C car didn't have back then, and that was a rotor engine. I mean, rotor engines are very cool. I forgot it at 5 gears. But yeah, these cars can just push. 1988 with no chicanes on the Mulsanne. You have to remember that they could go very quickly down here. I think the highest, or we took previously, I think the highest top speed reached here was like 400 kilometers per hour or something. And those are crazy figures. I just wish the gear would be a bit longer, the gears, which is something I will have to play around with. But yeah, this car is fun. I do hope we get it in AMS2. And then we could also get the Mazda MX-5. Let's just listen to the engine. This car is lovely to drive. Doesn't move around a lot and pulls. The only thing is that it's a manual, but that's okay. You have some tires. The tires going through the car body a bit. But I mean, that's a mod, and it has happened a bit with a few AMS2 models sometimes. Why did it into its form, but yeah. And that was a lap of Le Mans in the Mazda. Hopefully my driving isn't too bad, but yeah, this is a very fun car to drive. So what do you think about the cars coming? Because I think they're very interesting, because you have 1971, which you had the, for example, the normal 7K era of cars, and also the Moby Dick era. Then you went to 1988, and you had Group C, and you also had GTO cars, which I hope get added. And why I haven't discussed 2005 is because it will be coming very soon. But what do you think about all of this? Comment down below. While you're down there, please hit the like button and also subscribe. My next video, we'll have to see what it's on, because if the update comes, then I will make a video on that. If not, I could make it on another mod if you want, maybe discussing a more modern era of Le Mans, which might come, not the not the circuit, but the cars, because there's a period of like 20 years or 10-15 years which they aren't really delving into for some reason, and that would be interesting to have a look at. But until that, I've been Racing Legend, you've been my amazing first. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.